Okay, they did say sorry, but there was something more specific. Anybody remember what it was?
Sign a contract and broke it.
Okay, we already had that part, but about the discrimination piece.
It was all male.
It was all men. No, that was a different case. Go ahead. Just here.
If males came out and said that they were doing that, they would fire them as well.
Getting warmer on this, yeah. Go ahead.
See, the guys can't show, but the females, at some point in time, they're going to show.
See, that's the argument that's the discrimination. The court ultimately ended up saying on this, they said, they said, just because you have sex, it doesn't mean you're going to get pregnant. So guys aren't going to necessarily get pregnant. Ladies, y'all aren't necessarily going to get pregnant, which means there are men that are having sex out of wedlock and not getting caught, and there are women having sex out of wedlock that aren't getting caught too. So the men and the women are being treated exactly the same. And I can't remember who said it over there, but she did come out and tell. If he would have come out and told, they would have fired him too. It's ironic, but in kind of being a little bit more honest and religious by being truthful, she ultimately got fired in large measure because she told on herself. So and I'd asked y'all at different points, well, would you tell? And guys are like, no, man, I'm not telling. You remember when we had discussed this. Go ahead.
Will they even know their actual names? Or
It's helpful. The more that you give me, the easier it is. So the more that you show me the easier it is. So if there's numbers, if there's names, I'm not necessarily going to take off because you don't know specific things, but it's a lot easier for me to give you points when you do. Let's put it that way. Yes, ma'am?
So you said for the writing part, you give us a few options.
Yeah, I think what I'm probably going to do is, give you 8 questions and say answer 5, pick any 5, and so it's on your hands at that point.
Okay.
Don't go over though, just answer 5.
So it's just about the articles, the writing pieces?
There might be something from a big term, and we may have already answered that today. So, think about the stuff that's going to require some writing. That's what I'd say. And if it was going to require, if it's more than a sentence or two, then at that point it's possible that it could be an essay. And let me stress to you, and I want to make sure I say this, don't just write 2 or 3 sentences. If you write 2 or 3 sentences, it's going to be the beginning of an answer, but really explain it to me. Go ahead.
There was one question that kept coming. It was like, what's the document that's the basis of the 5th and 6th Amendment?
That's the Magna Carta, but that's not going to be on here. Let me get back into the articles. Other article questions.
Oh yeah, the rise of the oceans.
Rise of the oceans. Do you remember what that was?
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. This was actually in tune with politicians, right? And I had said to you that the problem is that politicians will promise us anything. And if you remember, Barack said, we need to give the people that are sick health care. And we need to create jobs for the jobless. And we're going to slow the rise of the oceans. Some of those things were pretty good promises. That last one sounded biblical. And everybody was clapping and yelling and cheering. And I guess the point was we don't like politicians because they overpromise. But when they overpromise, we clap for them more. So maybe it's kind of our fault. That's probably a good way of that. Wedding cake. What do you remember about the wedding cake? Say what now?
was discrimination against the gay community.
Discrimination against the gay community. Was it? Go ahead, Melina.
There was this baker who didn't want to bake this wedding cake for these 2 gay men who were going to get married in another state.
Yeah, this was in Colorado, and they were going to go get married somewhere else. And I believe gay marriage at that time was illegal in Colorado, but it was legal in the other state.
So it went to the court because the gay men said that it was at, I don't remember what they said it was. They said it was like, it was discrimination against them. But then the baker was like, I have my rights, and I chose not to do this cake.
Remember his belief.
Yeah,
it was his belief, because he says, well, my religion doesn't allow me to do this. You can get anything else but a wedding cake. You can get cookies, you can get pound cake, but you cannot get a wedding cake.
He did. He said all of these things, and that's a really good point on this. He said, okay, if I have to make a wedding cake for you, this is something that is against my religious beliefs, and I can't. If you want a cream puff, if you want donuts, if you want bread, none of that has to do with my religion, but a wedding cake is against my beliefs. And then the other thing, if you remember, they came up with a free speech argument. And they said, is making a cake something that's functional, or is it something that's creative, like a song or a poem or some of these kinds of things? And ultimately, the Supreme Court said that the state of Colorado had targeted Christianity when they said some things in there to suggest that this had really gone overboard. And this was the state of Colorado that actually had done this. They had said that using freedom of religion to justify discrimination is a despicable piece of rhetoric. And they said that that basically was attacking Christianity. The state couldn't do that, so they struck down their claim, and the baker won, did not have to make the cake. So that one was that one. Looking at some more and just jumping back, I want to get into the articles, and I just want to make sure that we get these. So y'all are good with the Catholic school. What about the drawing? Y'all remember the drawing?
Oh, that was the first one. Yeah.
Anybody at all? It was the first article. Go ahead, Viv. Little boy drew a picture of him shooting his friend, and what did he do with that picture? He gave it to the friend, and what did the friend do with that picture?
Give it to the dad.
Showed it to the mom, and what did the mom think?
She felt threatened.
The mom felt like it was a threat. In this, what was the policy that New Jersey had?
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance on guns, which means what?
No drawing.
No drawing. No nothing.
No drawing, no water guns, no finger guns, no rubber band guns, no real guns, no laser pistols, nothing at all. And ultimately, he violated the zero tolerance policy. So zero tolerance basically means if you do something, there's automatic punishment, there's no excuse. There's no justification for that. And you remember what his punishment was? Suspended for a day and counseling. You remember what he said he drew? He said he drew a water gun, and that's kind of an example of how this can go awry. The Starbucks, we talked about the Starbucks very early in the semester. There was a small video clip actually showing this. Bless you. Does anybody have any questions about the Starbucks?
What was the decision on that?
The Starbucks, ultimately, Starbucks gave them personal apologies, and I think it also gave them some money in order to do some other things. I was kind of hoping that they got some coffee, but I never got confirmation that they did.
Was the McDonald's coffee?
Something for their employees.
Starbucks actually did have mandatory sensitivity training, and they actually closed their stores for a few hours this summer so that they could actually train them to avoid situations like this. And yeah, the manager is not there anymore. That's right. Did I?
What was the decision on the article about the dude who was writing those really bad lyrics to his ex-girlfriend?
Well, let's go to that. But before we do, let me just make sure. I've posted a couple of things in here. And just to make sure that you've got these, I posted these in here. And these were actually dealing with some of the quotes from the chapter. I don't know that I posted chapter 2 quotes yet. I'll make sure that I get some of those in. Because goodness knows, I read off quotes from chapter 2 dealing with Locke, dealing with the Declaration, dealing with the Articles, dealing with the problem with taxation. There were 3 or 4. And these probably will be good for a multiple choice question, some of them, but not all. So make sure that you're comfortable with those. Getting back to the question that you just had, though, and let me delve into that for just a second. You were talking about the song lyrics, and if you go to chapter 2, that was actually Anthony Ellimus. And if you remember with Anthony Ellimus on this, what was it that he did?
He was writing lyrics about his ex-wife.
So they say.
Do you remember what some of these lyrics were?
Very graphic lyrics.
Like what?
I want to kill you.
I want to kill you, that's as good as you can give me?
They're very specific.
Turn that bitch ghost, she yells out on camera. Yeah, if you remember on this, what did he say? I'm not going to rest until your body is a mess, soaked in blood and dying. You remember some of those things? You know, if you can give me some quotes, sometimes that's probably a good thing. And I also put a link in there, and it's got some more. Something about wanting to shoot up a kindergarten class, turning that bitch ghost, Kim says, and he was threatening the FBI agent. There were a number of pieces on this. He wrote song lyrics in the middle of a divorce about his soon-to-be ex-wife. She felt intimidated, and ultimately he was convicted. And you remember how much time he was given in prison?
40.
4 years or 5?
44 years?
No, I said 4 years or 5.
4 years or 5 years. 44 months is what I remember too. He got 44 months. He sued and he basically, you remember what he said was his defense? He said what? I don't have any intention of doing this. What am I really doing by writing these lyrics? Artistic expression. I'm coping with my feelings because I'm losing my marriage right now. So he said this is and you remember what his name was? Tone Dougie. Yeah, he created the persona Tone Dougie and he posted these song lyrics on Facebook. So it wasn't even like there was music. These were written things where his wife would see him. Supreme Court took a look at this and they said there is no intent actually to do this. There's no intent. So that's the first piece. The other piece on this, in addition to no intent, was if you ban this, then what's the next thing that you could actually ban? Because lyrics or video games or movies or whatever, you're setting a very dangerous precedent. And so ultimately they limited it to this case. But the fact is, it was a 7-2 vote. He was cleared. They removed that 44 months. So keep that one in mind. You'll notice up here, there's other articles. And again, just to hit on some of these, y'all remember land grab?
Yes.
New London, Connecticut.
I remember this one.
Yeah, remember the land grab article and take a good look at that because this was the guy, and I can't remember, it was somebody different in all of the classes, but there was somebody in all of the classes that wanted manis and petties and to have her hair did and to be able to buy scarves and was that Molly? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, look, zoom in on Molly really quick, Lucas. She really looks like she needs to be on camera. But remember the trick on this was that they were taking land, they were buying land using what principle? Eminent domain. So they would pay what a reasonable person would pay, and they were going to knock all those poor houses down to build shopping malls, condominiums, restaurants, I mean really expensive things so that Molly could shop and have her cheesecake and have a doorman let her in. Yeah, keep zooming in on Molly. So with this in mind, this is what we've got here. Now, with all that being said, was this legal to do?
Yep.
It was. Why?
Because
It was going to benefit the state.
yeah,
Eminent domain traditionally has been something that would benefit everybody, like a road or a hospital or a park. But in building these luxury things, how could that benefit the whole community?
because it's going to be
Revenue, taxes, jobs. It was economic is what it was. And I think I had used the quote, it's like the Joker said, sometimes you've got to break an omelet in order to make a few eggs. Well, everybody that continues to live in the community would get to eat off of the omelet, but we're going to have to remove some of the trouble, if you will, in order to ultimately do this. And that's what they did. It perfectly legal. And I think I told you all about that Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, they went and tried to claim him.
They went after his house because they wanted to build the Lost Liberty Inn, which would create jobs. What's that?
Didn't he resign after?
And he resigned after that. Exactly. What was webcams?
Teenage drivers.
Teenage drivers here in Maryland, right? How'd these webcams work?
Every time the car ran like a rough.
Every time the car ran over a sign?
Every
Every time the car went over a certain speed. Go ahead, Daniel. Pablo.
That's you do this every time.
I do sometimes, yeah.
Because every time the car made like a very rough turn or like a stop, then the camera will automatically turn on.
How long?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. And what would they film? Because there were two cameras, right?
Yeah, they'll film the outside of the car and the inside.
They would film what the driver would see, and they would film so you could see what the driver was doing. And it, basically G-forces. If you accelerated too quickly, if you decelerated too quickly, if you swerved, if you changed the G-forces in the car, then at that point the camera would click on, it would film those two clips and send them where?
To the parents.
To the parents. And the thought was that the parents would get on the kids and they would end up driving better. Y'all got mad. Y'all said, my car is my privacy, and you're invading me with these cameras. A number of y'all did. But the thing of this is that, you know, at some level you're right. But the other part is, if you're a good driver, this can actually not incriminate you, but it could actually clear you, because it would demonstrate that you weren't doing anything, and in fact that you had made the right maneuvers. Were the cameras always running?
No.
Only when the G-forces changed. And what was the change in the driving from the beginning of the year to the end?
More than 80%.
Came down how much? Not 60.
80?
80.
I think it was like 86% is what it was. Be good with some of these numbers when you look back through these, but there was that. Miscellaneous porn. There's